101.5 FM, John Farnham off his very successful Whispering Jack album in the late 80s. Can you believe it was that long ago? By golly, that makes me feel old. 8 minutes past 10, Morning Magazine for a Thursday morning. It's the 19th of April. We are focusing on the upcoming elections on the 28th of April. I think we're just about all electioned out between state elections and local government elections, but it's an important time. We're coming to the end of the first term of this Super Council, if you like, the Amalgamated Super Council. And for the second hour this morning, we're talking to a mayoral candidate. And today it's Greg Chapman, and he joins us in the studio. And we thank him for his time. Greg Chapman, a busy time you've had thus far, and still another week and a half to go.
Yeah, Darren, it's really picking up now. I'm getting about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and on the road every day, and up and down and talking to people, and meetings and speeches at night. Yeah, but it's going very well. People in the
Pine Rivers area will certainly know the name Chapman. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I was born in 1960, and I was born and bred in Kalanga, and then grew up there. As a boy, I fished every creek in town and climbed every tree, and fished Doldy's rocks and ran through up in the Pine River. And I went to school at Kalanga State School. And then I moved on and went to high school at Strathbourne High School, and I left there and I started an apprenticeship in our family business, which is stainless steel fabrication. And I then went through that, and then after I finished there as an apprentice, I went up and worked on the mines for a while, probably 12 months. And while I was up there, I saw a lot of good things with unions and a lot of bad things with unions, and I also saw a lot of stupidity on management's part as well. But all in all, it was a real eye-opener. I come back then and worked in the family business, and we worked there for many, many years. And then we produced breweries. We sent overseas to China. We also made spiral pipe. We worked in all the breweries in Brisbane, Forex and Castlemaine, and in the other one's Foster's. But we also produced spiral pipe, bends and fittings, and we sent them around the world as well. I left there then, and I started with my wife in a cabinet making business. And we started with about 4 or 5 men, and then we ended up with 72. We put on apprentices, and that was quite good too, because the business had been good to us, and we actually put back into the system. But I think I thought I only had the only apprentices in Australia that had 5 or 6 grandmothers, because every now and then one had passed away, and it'd always be a long weekend. So we had to make sure we counted up how many relations he had. But that's just young fellas as they are. But the young fellas were pretty good until they get a carton of beer, a driver's licence and a girlfriend, and then they seem to go a little bit haywire. But all in all, we straightened them out, and we made them go through their apprenticeships, and they've done quite well, and we were very proud to have them. But other than that, I went back to college, and I did mechanical engineering, and I also did AutoCAD drafting as well on top of that. And that put me good stead for all the computer stuff that come into our business. And we put in overhead routers and computer cutting, and it worked out very, very well because of the cost factor with kitchens coming in from overseas. But we were quite happy with the way that it progressed. Very good.
So why are you putting your hand up to run for mayor?
Well, I wouldn't have done it, only that I've had a lot of people ask me, can you run? Would you do it? And I said, well, it's not that bad, is it? But when I've gone in and kicked the log, the white ants are a lot further up the log than I thought they were. And we've got some real problems. We're starting to spiral into debt. We're not getting the services we require. People are really, really, really hurting bad. The water's gone through the roof. And if you're a pensioner, you've got to find your food, you've got to find your rates, and then on top of that, you've got to find your water. Now, it's just getting out of hand. And people who are self-retired, and they worked hard in the first place to buy a second house, just because they work hard to buy that second house, we slug them another 25% on their rates. It just seems to be very unfair. And that's what I'm trying to address, some issues.
So if you're elected as mayor, how are you going to bring the cost of water down?
Well, the way the water is at the moment, I had a meeting with John Black yesterday, and it's a big box of twisted worms, and it will take a while to sort out. But if we can do it, we should try to buy it back and keep it under our own wing, because that way we can be in control of our own destiny. All the water is an essential item, and we must have it to survive. But we mustn't have that exorbitant that we've got people frightened to using water. You know, it's just like they've talked to people, put in tanks. Everyone put in tanks in the dry. Now it's rained. Oh, now they're still getting slugged the big money, even though they're using their own water. And it's just because it goes past the door. I realise we've got to pay for infrastructure and all that, but spread it out a bit and make it a bit easier. Give them a breathing space, because at the moment the economic environment is terrible.
We've got an amalgamation of three councils, and I know at one of the Meet the Candidates you've used the term of being forced to amalgamate. This was forced upon us. We had three separate entities, a proud Pine Rivers, a proud Caboolture, and proud Redcliffe City Council all being combined. Some fears from other centres is that one centre gets too much, one centre gets favoured, and so forth. At the moment, we've got a situation where 6 councillors are coming out of the Pine Rivers district. If you're elected, we'll have 6 councillors and a mayor. What do the people of Caboolture and Redcliffe districts feel about that?
Well, funny you might say that. I actually lived for 17 years on Pumice-Stone Road, and I grew up there I got older there with the kids, and it was a fantastic place. We went down to Donnybrook and our holidays down there and fished, and it was very, very good. But the area itself is very good for Caboolture. It had its own pride. Everything was fantastic. And now Caboolture feels like they've been alienated. Redcliffe, some people down there feels like they've been alienated. But when you look at it and you go down to Arana Hills, Ferny Hills, down the hills area, they all say, well, how come so much is being spent at Redcliffe? And then when I've been to meetings down there, someone would say, oh, well, they're feeling it down at Redcliffe as well. And then you'd end up with outcry. They'd say, well, hang on a minute, you know, they're putting in a railway line with 104 million down there. That's coming out of our pocket as well. And then the waterfront, 22 or 24 million down the waterfront, you know, with the bubble spraying thing on the front. It looks like a lighthouse. And then they're going to look at an upgrade for Margate Beach, probably another 18 million. It's fair enough to spend the money, but you've got to try to be fair right across the board. The people from Arana Hills, their greatest gripe is that they're closer to Brisbane than what they are to the Moreton Bay Regional Shire. And I can understand that. But they must be consulted in certain matters, such as the road down there, Queen's Road and South Pine Road. Because if they go and put all that roadworks in there and they don't consult the people and take it on board, they're going to make a big mismatch, and people are going to be taking the council to court. They're going to fight, and it's not good. They've got to try to put it into perspective in the first place and try to work with them and get a win-win situation. Don't go in there and say, well, that's what you get, and finish and walk out. We've got to work with the people.
So if you're elected on the 28th of April as the mayor, will you be advocating to do yourself out of a job to bring down the super council and realign boundaries of a de-amalgamation or a re-amalgamation?
Well, I can't really say that I'd bring it in, but it's actually a state government thing.
But would you be advocating on part of the people? That do you disagree with the ideology, if you like, of a Moreton Bay Regional Council or a super council of 400,000 people?
Well, actually, it's too big. It's way too big to keep control of.
Yet it works in Brisbane City Council with 2 million people. So Brisbane City Council works, but Moreton Bay Regional Council for 400,000 can't work. Is that what you say?
No. What I'm saying is Brisbane City was always that size. You know, it's not too bad. You have a lot of people there, but what you've got now, you've had people who are from Redcliffe, you've got people from Caboolture, you've got people from Pine Rivers, and they've amalgamated them, and all of a sudden you've got people who think, oh no, that end of town's getting more money than I am, and it's just a massive fight at the moment. And it is. But if it went to the vote and the people voted well over 65%, I would say there's nothing wrong with it. But I don't want to force de-amalgamation on the people. It must be up to them to vote for. That way we're not going to have any scrapping after. So the people will say, yes, well, it went to the democratic vote, we got more than 65%, we're going to roll over that way now, and that's the way we will go.
So just to be clear on this, if you're elected, you will advocate to Campbell Newman that the residents of Moreton Bay Regional Council get an opportunity to decide whether they want to continue as Moreton Bay Regional Council or redefine their boundaries.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd ask that of the Premier to be able to look at it to see if we could all possibly do it, because we have to try to make it work. We've had 4 years of it, but the 4 years hasn't turned out the best, as the people say. There's been more money spent in one end of town than the other, because Caboolture and Pine Rivers looked after their backyards pretty well. They spent 90 million on their sewage in Pine Rivers, about 80 odd million in upgrades in Caboolture. And when you go down to Redcliffe will need probably around about 150 million, approximately, to pick up their sewage works and fix it up. Now, that's going to come out of everyone's money. Now,
so it's a big windfall for Redcliffe City.
It would be, yes, it is, and it's not as if they didn't know about it. There's been a lot of complaints made about it, and then the place has just run down and needed infrastructure to lift that up. You know, it's all right to have a bus and a beautiful waterfront, but if you can't put your backside over a toilet seat, you're going to be in trouble.
We're speaking with Greg Chapman. He's the mayoral candidate for the upcoming election. We're going to have just a quick little break coming up, and then have a bit of a chat a little bit further about the upcoming election on the 28th of April as a mayoral candidate. This is 101.5 FM. 101.5 FM, it's the Morning Magazine, 21 minutes past 10. You're with Darren right through until 11 o'clock this morning. Thanks for your company. And we're talking about the upcoming the council election on the 28th of April, and the mayoral candidate, Greg Chapman, joins us today, and we thank him for his time. Greg Chapman, the North East Business Park has been a well-discussed project and very emotive issue with a lot of people. Where do you stand on the North East Business Park there at Burpengary?
Yes, well, I've been over that park. It's about 750 hectares, runs down the edge of the Caboolture River. It's actually over the backside of the right-hand side when you go north of the BP service station. And it's a massive lump of land, and it's going to be a fantastic development. There's just work there begging to be done, and I think that it's a real win-win situation for Deception Bay and also the Caboolture area, for young blokes to go down there and young people to get a job and to actually maybe pick up a trade, because they'll need cementers, chippies, they'll need bricklayers, they're going to need electricians, steel fixers, the whole lot, and it's going to be a massive amount of work. They're going to spend there approximately $2.4 billion over 20 years. And that's going to keep a lot of people employed. They're going to have an industrial part there with the industrial park, and they're going to have a residential, and they'll also have the marina. Now, the marina has actually run into a few problems, and they're going through that now, but it just seems to be that the edge of it is dragging. The marina has been okayed by the state government, so long as it passes some regulations that they've put across, but I can see no problem with that going ahead.
Experts have said to us that the issue with the marina is the 6.5 kilometres journey down the Caboolture River. It's going to have environmental impacts on the Caboolture River, the ongoing dredging that's going to be required. Alan Sutherland the other day said he'd like to be a little bit more cautious based on what's happened in Townsville and Gladstone. What's your answer to that?
Yes, they go on about that, but what happens when we have a massive flood too, and it washes everything down the river? But that river's being choked up at the front part anyway. Some of the boats can't get into Monty's Marine because they hit the mud down the front of Beachmere.
So you're saying that the river needs to be dredged anyway?
It needs to be dredged anyway, right down through to the mouth. It's clogging up. It is what it is. It's actually the sand coming in, because it predominantly blows in from the Moreton side, Moreton Island. It brings the sand in, and it just silts up. That area is a fantastic area. I've fished and crabbed in it. It's great, but the area could be a lot better, and the green zone that they've actually applied in this development will be fantastic for day trippers, for kids to fish along the side of the river, and for bike paths too. There's a beautiful buffer green zone there right along the edge of the river that I've seen on the drawings, and it's just a fantastic idea.
So if you're elected, you're going to fast-track Northeast Business Park?
We will push it as hard as we can, but what we must do, we must work still with the environmental side of things. But I can't see why 6 years to get this thing through. That's people have bought that land. If they pay a massive amount of money, they're still in there paying interest rates on it. By the time they get out of it, they might make $500 a block of land out of it, and it's not worth their worry. Because this area is just begging for work, and we can give it to the young.
The road network around Petrie, the roundabout there for people coming in from Debra, also down the problems that they've had with the AJ Wiley Bridge as a result of the flooding. It's created a real bottleneck through Launton and Petrie. What's the feedback you're getting about that area, and what, as Mayor, can you do to assist people that live in those areas?
Well, we've got to change the bridge. I've actually jumped on the bandwagon there when I first put my hand up, and we were taking that to the state government at the time. That was Anna Bly's area, and we chased that fairly hard. We needed the new bridge because it was over 12 months now that we've had those problems. They're actually starting to fix it now, but it'll probably be another 6 to 8 months before we get that bridge open. I actually met with Seath, Trevor Ritzenberg, David Dwyer, and one of the other federal members, which is Peter Dutton, in regards to a bridge to go over the Young's Crossing area. Now, that's a big push. It's going to cost a fair bit of money, but what they're doing is a lot of people are coming down.
And that would be a council responsibility, wouldn't it, that bridge?
No, well, it is partly council, but we're looking for federal funding for that.
Right.
And they're well and truly there to help us. We've got a state government now, and the federal government, we're hoping that will come on board. But the state government now is really accepting to what we're looking at, and we'd love to be able to put that bridge in, because everyone's coming in from the top side of Narangbar and over through Oakey Flat Road and cutting down Scouts Road just to get over the bridge. A lot of people coming from Debra side, they come down and they want to cut through into Warner, and it makes a massive difference. The roundabout is at Petrie. It's just a bottleneck there. I was there this morning and I was trying to get up here in time, and I got caught there with signs, and I had to turn around and leave the area. I couldn't wait any longer.
Imagine the people that are going through there every day.
Oh, mate, they must be pulling their hair out. You see, what a lot of people are doing from the north side are going down the highway, but now the highway's bottlenecked as well from North Lakes down, or even if it's a big day, they get up through to Burpengary.
So do you have answers for your constituents?
Well, what we've got to do, we've got to try to open it up a bit and give another lane in, and we've got to try to open up because what we're doing, we're going down to a smaller lane when they branch off to go down the Gateway, and when they branch off to go back into Brisbane to the Chermside.
So we're talking the strip, and it always puzzles me that section next to the big radio broadcast tower, that we go from 4 lanes down to 2 and back to 4 lanes again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'd have to look at that.
But that's obviously a federal road. How are you going to fix that?
Well, we'd have to talk to the federal government and try to bring them on board. But it's something that has to be looked at, because the amount of time people spend on the Gateway coming home and going to work, it's just unbelievable. People coming in from Bribie, it's just a nightmare.
Some would say that the problems that we have here is there's just not enough industry in the Moreton Bay region, and in some respects we're a dormitory suburb for Brisbane. What's your claims about that? What can you do as Mayor to bring business to the Moreton Bay region?
We would try to cut down on expenditure for them to set up in our shire. We try to bring people in and give them great incentives. Not just sort of like, if you come to us, we'll help you out. No, if you come to us, we will try to cut the price down. I've even looked at such things that in the old days you used to have the Department of Industrial Development. What we would look at is trying to put up sheds to accommodate such things and cut the rent down to nothing so they can almost get on their feet. It's the hardest thing in the world is struggle to try to get that first year in. Most businesses go broke in the first 2 to 3 years. But if they can get a little bit of incentive and keep things rolling, they can stand on their feet and get going.
101.5 FM, it's 28 minutes past 10. We're talking to Greg Chapman, the mayoral candidate for the 28th of April. You raise a point there that when, I know back a few years ago, the Warwick Shire Council went through an issue when they lost a big employer and then gave a big parcel of land for Big W to set up a distribution centre. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about? Is attracting a major corporation here by giving them great incentives?
Not massive corporations. Their profit margins are well and truly through the roof. It's just small business.
But how do you attract someone? We need someone that's going to employ a lot of people. How are you going to attract? I mean, setting up a bunch of small businesses is a great theory, but you want to employ people to get them to stay to work in this region and spend money in this region rather than travelling to Brisbane.
We do, and just the likes like, say we get things cheaper overseas. We buy all our T-shirts for all our workers on the council. That's not on. If we're going to keep our money here, we've got to produce here, and that's what we've got to do. If someone had the ability to make all the shirts for the council, great. All our workers would be put into shirts that are made in the Shire. If we're going to buy trucks for our workforce, they've got to come from in the Shire. We've got Brisbane Isuzu down the road here. We've got Toyotas all over Strathpine and down at Redcliffe. Buy them within the Shire. People say, oh yeah, but we can save money if we buy them outside. They've got a better, cheaper rate. We might say $300 a car or a vehicle. Don't do that. Keep the money within the Shire. And if people say, oh well, yeah, but their bloke who works on the trucks doesn't live in the Shire, it doesn't matter. He's still going to go down the road and buy a hamburger, a can of Coke, and he's going to live and drink and eat in our area. And we have to try to keep that here and try to keep the people to spend the money here.
One of the big issues over the last 12 months that's been raised, I know that the Quest community newspapers, they do a terrific job, and they had a forum on sporting. I don't know if you're over what happened there. We're talking about a big parcel of land that was gifted to the Caboolture Shire Council and then as to the Moreton Bay Regional Council down near the Aquatic Centre there on Morayfield Road. You're familiar with the parcel of land?
I think so.
The new AFL ground is going in there. There's been calls for a super stadium to go in there so that we can host rugby league, AFL events and so forth. What are you going to do, Greg Chapman, to get that fast track, that sporting precinct?
Well, we would have to look at the plans they bring in and how much money it's going to cost us, because we don't want to burden the ratepayer anymore. I know it's great to have it, but we can't go willy-nilly, because look at the Titans down the coast. They're going through some rough trots at the moment. And what we don't want to do is put it in and find out that we're going to go broke. What it is, it's fantastic. Like the operation was a success, but the patient died. We don't want that. We want to be able to sustain ourselves and keep going. Like, who in their right mind would have thought that Greece and those other countries such as Ireland were going to do it so hard and look at bankruptcy? Our council itself will go bankrupt if we don't keep an eye on our dollars. It's okay to say, oh, we owe so much money and the people can keep paying, but if the economic environment falls over, we do too. And it's quite possible that it could happen. That's why we've got to keep our finger on the pulse and keep an eye on everything that we spend.
Sporting and I heard you say at one of the Meet the Candidates, you're very much about kids getting involved in junior sport and local sport. Little Athletics do a terrific job right across the region. Did it surprise you to find out that we didn't have a synthetic running track, a first-class synthetic running track anywhere in the Moreton Bay region, neither the Pine Rivers Caboolture District or the Redcliffe?
Yes, it is actually.
What are you going to do about it?
Mate, we would have to look at it and find out where we could put one. We don't want to go put it willy-nilly here or there. We want to find out the best position for it.
Well, Redcliffe doesn't want it in Caboolture. Caboolture doesn't want it in Redcliffe. Pine Rivers doesn't want it in Redcliffe. Redcliffe doesn't want it in Pine Rivers. Do you see the problem we have here?
That's right, and that's where the amalgamation has come to a bit of a fore there. You can see how that fighting comes in. It just seems like that we're all fighting each other around the town. Whereas when we had no amalgamation, they could be in charge of their own destiny. Now we've got a bit of a fight on board. There's only so much money to go around, I know. But at the moment, I would say that we would have to put it into a barrel and almost pull out a straw.
Do you know which Little Athletics has the most members?
I thought it was Caboolture.
I'm pretty sure it's Deception Bay.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it's Deception Bay. So surely somewhere central to there. Where the problem that these people are telling us is that these kids get 13 or 14 and become like that they're getting along, and they have to stop where they're at and move to a Brisbane so that they can further their advancement of their athletic career, because we don't have one here. Isn't that a shame to the Moreton Bay region, as 400,000 residents, and we don't have a first-class running track?
It is. It's like if we've got kids with ability, we don't need to hold them back. We need to push them as far as we possibly can and get them to run. It's like they train day and night. And what we've got to do is give them the ability to be able to train on the right surfaces and give them a good run.
You've been semi-critical of the rail to Redcliffe, the spanning of the rail to Redcliffe. We've got a rail link from Caboolture to Wamuran that's still sitting there. Would you advocate in getting the rail network back up and running between Caboolture and Wamuran, considering the development of Caboolture West, which has just been recently gazetted, 70,000 homes?
Yes, I would. I'd definitely look at that. You know, I see we used to run a steam line up there. There used to be an old steam engine used to run up that area, but I can't see why it shouldn't be put back in place and put it in earlier, so that when we do actually finally do the development, we've got the infrastructure there. Do it over a slower period, but make sure it's in place. And we should be able to accommodate the people that are there, so we don't have more gridlock on the roads.
We're speaking with Greg Chapman. It's 10:35. Greg Chapman is a mayoral candidate for the 28th of April at the local council elections. Greg Chapman, there's a new bridge just going in down at Morayfield now that's going to link up the western and eastern parts of Morayfield. A new housing development going in. You're familiar with the area that we're talking about, up behind the shopping centres, up behind Dixon Road?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
1,200 homes going in there is the projection. The bridge is almost complete. If you look across, you can see it there. And I believe that was a bridge that was promised by Kevin Rudd, and it's been paid for there. The way that is now, we're going to have 1,200 homes, and they're going to go straight back out and straight onto Morayfield Road. Has this been bad planning from the council and the state government?
Yeah. Well, what we have to look at too is, the council itself makes the decisions on certain things, but the state government a lot of time overrules the council. And what we have to do is bring it back to our own backyard and say, well, hang on, we've got to be in charge of this. You know, they overrule it and put things in. But if they're going to do that and overrule it, they've got to put in the infrastructure to be able to take those extra cars and those extra people. Just like if they put in a development and they override a development, what they have to do, they have to make sure that down the line there's no flooding and there's no problems with extra water going down the road. These are the things that we've got to look at so we don't cause more problems in the future, because in the reality of things, our ancestors are giving us a burden to take up after they're gone. And that's what we have to look at.
We have a look at a lot of the development that goes on, and you say that the state government forces things on local council. Are you saying that our local council hasn't been vocal enough to stand up to the state government?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, you've got to do things for the better of the community. You're only a custodian for the area for 4 years. Whether or not you do the right thing, you're only a custodian. And you must do the right thing for the people over that period of time. You've got to get in there and fight tooth and nail for your 10 cents worth, that's for sure.
Do you believe that Unity Water was something that was thrust upon the council?
Yes, I do.
What would you have done differently?
I would have kept it under our arm. Like Pine River's had all its water there.
But how would you do that if it's legislation from state government? How are you going to keep that under your arm?
You would have fought. You would have said, hang on, this is what we're in charge of it. We want to keep it. It's going all right at the moment. We're not paying a fortune for it. How come? Why can't we be in charge of our own water? It's actually Brisbane City came into Pine Rivers and built the dam on Pine Rivers land. And in the long run, what they said there was, we'll come into your community, put the dam in, and you'll get free water. But in the long run, it didn't work out like that.
So are you saying that the Moreton Bay Regional Council rolled over to the state government on the issue of Unity Water?
Well, they should have put up a better fight. They should have. Because Now we're paying through the nose for it. The water was there. Everyone was happy. We were getting water. It was at a much cheaper rate. I know that when we had the drought, we had to do a pull back and stop people from using so much water. But in the end, the people were great. 3-minute showers. Everyone knew we were in dire straits in drought. Now we've got plenty of water. The same thing. Everyone is down, cutting their water down, and it's quite good. Eventually, we will have another drought, but we have to keep our water for ourselves, so someone else can't be in charge of our own destiny.
We're speaking with Greg Chapman, the mayoral candidate for the Moreton Bay Regional Council for the elections on the 28th of April. Greg Chapman, there's been a big vocal area of the Hills district of the Moreton Bay region want to go back to Brisbane. They say it's better for them because they've got cheaper rates if they go back to Brisbane. They want to leave the Moreton Bay region. If you're mayor after the 28th of April, what will your statement be to the residents of the Hills district of the Moreton Bay region?
Yes, well, if they want to secede and go back to Brisbane, fair enough. But they've got to have a better percentage than 65% of the vote to be able to go there. I know that they're geographically close.
But what if Brisbane don't want them?
Well, that's up to them. They must have already done their homework, because when I talk to the blokes from the RAGS group, they're adamant that they want to swing over to Brisbane, and I think they've already done their homework. So
they've already spoken to Graham Quirk and to Ray Smith, and
yes,
and already.
I'd say they are, because mainly the thing is that there's nearly a $300 or $400 difference in rates, depending on what house you pick up and what you go by. But there's a massive difference in rates for what they pay in this area.
So it's fair to say then the Moreton Bay region is getting overcharged for their rates.
Yes, yeah, when you look at the Brisbane side of things. But the thing is, people look at the money side of things at the moment, and that's what's killing them. You've got a retiree, he can't pay the water bills. Even though he doesn't use the water, he still has to pay the charges. And it's killing them. The people are hurting drastically at the moment.
So what are you going to do when you're elected mayor? 28th of April, you come in. How are you going to reduce the people in the Moreton Bay region's rate bill and their water bill? What are you going to do as mayor to bring those costs down?
We have to look at the wastage that we produce, how we go about things. We have to look at how we actually purchase things. We've got to try to get it down as close as we can, but still incorporating our own pricing for the people we buy from in our community. We've got to push our sales to our own community and boost the local people, but keep it down. There's things down there that we can cut down on, such as the area of water, that if we had it under our own arm, we could bring it down. But at the moment, we haven't got anyone on the board to say that, well, this is what we're going to do. We've got no one representing us.
So looking at those fees there, so you're going to bring those down by the water's one example, but surely the current council would have been advocating at the moment to bring those costs down and do the best job they could to keep the costs under control?
Well, okay, then, but the cost of things, like I think the rail link to Redcliffe's a great idea, fantastic, but why do we have to pay $104 million out of our pocket when it comes down to a state government thing? It's $104 million. It's like the federal government gave $285 million to a car company to keep them going. We're only a small area. We're not producing massive amounts of money.
The argument that the deputy mayor and the mayor have both said in this studio, the reason why we're putting that money in is we would have to have done it anyway. When a school is built, we have to pay for the footpaths out the front. We have to do the upgrading of the roads. We have to do the lighting out the front. He said there's no difference. We're talking about a huge rail network. Is this a case that the council has just sold it badly to the people and told them that we're putting up this $104 million, because if the state government and the federal government had have come in and said we're building this rail network regardless, we would have had to tip in the $104 million whether we volunteered it or not?
Well, when you look at it, the $104 million, is it going to be $104 million, or we're going to have a blowout? And when we have a blowout, have we signed a piece of paper to say that we're going to have to keep paying? Now, you know full well as I do that when they say, oh, well, it's only going to cost us $1.3 billion, and when it comes in at 2.5, Where are we going to get that extra money? Oh, well, we're just going to slug the Moreton Bay residents for the rest of the money. I know infrastructure and all that comes into it, but where does the penny stop?
If you believe the mayor and the deputy mayor, they're telling us that there'll be new businesses as a result of the rail to Redcliffe. All those new businesses will be new rated businesses, so there'll be more revenue coming back to council as a result of it. They're saying that it's a win-win. You disagree, Greg Chapman?
Well, mate, I'd love to say yes, it's great. But hey, when they said, oh, the front of Redcliffe's going to be fantastic once we rejuvenate it, what happened down there? The people down there almost starved to death when they were doing the regeneration. They put up all the signs, kept people from going down to eat. It's okay, but they went in there and did it, but a lot of people didn't survive, and they were doing it really hard. They put that much work in the front there over periods of time. They couldn't get clients in. They couldn't sell their products, and it got really hard. That's the same thing. You've got to look after the people. I don't know how they survived for that period of time while all that waterfront work was done. And now the waterfront work's been done. Fantastic. Looks great. The only thing is I don't like too much is spending $200,000 on a windmill down the front there. I would have thought that we could have got a little bit better dollar spent better.
We'll have a quick break. It's 10:45. We'll have about 60 seconds, and then we'll be back to wrap up what's happening with the mayoral candidate, Mr. Greg Chapman. 13 and a half minutes away from the news at 11 o'clock, and then Alan Jones. Is currently looking at the mayoral candidacy for the 28th of April, and Greg Chapman is kindly given up his time to be with us today. Greg Chapman, there's been a lot of ongoing talk for some time about acquisitions of real estate by candidates, by mayors, anyone that's sitting in the council. Kate Hall, a candidate for Division 11, was in here yesterday, and one of her statements that she made is, and I won't quote her verbatim, but it was along the lines of that if she is elected, she will not partake in any real estate transaction within the Moreton Bay region in her term in council. What's your response to councillors, whether they be mayor, deputy mayor, or general councillors, partaking in real estate activity within the Moreton Bay region?
Yes, well, you're never going to stop people buying and selling real estate, so long as it hasn't been like insider trading, so long as they haven't picked up the information.
But how do you know? How do we, as the general public, and I'm sure it's fair to say that the general public, the moment they hear that a councillor or a mayor has made a purchase or an acquisition of real estate and then gets a development or something, and they look like they're going to benefit as a result of it, straight away people think corruption.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly true. But the thing is, if they're going to just buy a house, a real estate, just for themselves, fair enough. But if they buy a lump of land for development, it just seems to be a little bit of a peculiar interest. But what I can't stand is that when a councillor goes in and buys a house under rates arrears, when someone is doing it hard, whether there's a death in the family, there's sickness, or someone's lost their job, there's no reason for them to go in and purchase that house under rates arrears.
Surely that wouldn't happen.
Well, mate, you check it out. But I tell you what.
Are you saying, Greg Chapman, that a councillor in the Moreton Bay Regional Council has acquired a property that was in rates arrears?
I'd say that, yes. But what I'm saying is that
do you think that's right?
Lawfully, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But morally, it has the stench of death. It's shocking.
So what do you do as mayor to change that?
You pull a policy in and you put it into place that no councillor will be able to purchase a house under rates arrears, and he's been put into that place as a guardian for the people. He's not put in there to make financial gain from someone's misfortune. And to me, mate, it's like a vulture sitting on the fence waiting for the carcass to fall so they can race in there and pick its eyes out. In my way of thinking, it just stinks and should never be done.
So, after the 28th of April, Greg Chapman's elected as mayor. You give a commitment today that you will put a policy in place that will never happen again?
I'll put it in blood. It will never happen. While I'm in charge, that will never be able to happen. Never.
Greg Chapman, I want to talk about now one of the issues. Tell us, basically, a bit of a summation. What's the council got right in this term, and what have they got wrong?
Well, what they got right is they tried hard, but they didn't try hard enough. They had the ability to do what they had to do, but just remember, the mayor there at the moment, he's already had 4 years at Redcliffe to be mayor, and now he's had another 4 years to be the mayor of Moreton Bay Regional Shire. He knew full well his sewage works was no good. He knew full well he needed to put an upgrade there, but it's not a real vote winner. But if you put the money into the forefront and put it down there, it looks good, it feels good. But the only thing is, the poor people down there, when the wind's blowing the wrong way and you have an overflow, they're getting choked to death. Now, we must keep up the infrastructure. And the only thing is, too, when Caboolture actually put their money into the bin, they had a fair whack of money that they put in. And that's gone back into the system. Now everyone else will drag out of that to support their works that they need done in their area, whereas Caboolture looked after their place fairly well.
The magic wand. You get elected on the 28th of April. What do? What's the first thing you do?
The first thing we would do, we would make it fair right across the board. We would put in areas and we'd make the councillors go out and they would sit and talk. That's the thing. Well, I've been around to these RAGS meetings and we've rolled up to every one of them. A lot of times the mayors don't turn up or the sitting councillor doesn't turn up. But we turn up and we talk. The thing is, you've got to have good debate to get good results. And these people must turn up for this. If the people have got a gripe, listen to them. You might not like to hear it, but it's what their gripe is. And give them a chance to voice it. And then listen to them and take on their concerns. And you can say to them, no, I don't think that's going to happen because this is our problem. That's okay to say that, but you've got to be able to speak to them and tell them why not. Don't just not go there. You've got to be able to talk it out.
There's been a fairly publicised stoush between the mayor and the councillor for Division 2, now a mayoral candidate himself, Chris Whiting. Have people in Division 2 suffered as a result?
Well, a lot of people I've actually spoken to say that for all the fighting they've done, if they'd actually put their hard work into the council, the place would be flying. But it just seems to be cloak and dagger. Behind the scenes, there's, well, I can get this on them and I can get that on him. And it just seems to be backwards and forwards. So
what do you do, Greg Chapman, to ensure you don't get the same divisiveness in the council if you're elected as mayor?
We just work through together, mate. It doesn't matter which side of politics they're from. I don't care. But we've got to do the right thing by the community. If we can't do that, we shouldn't be there.
It's 7 minutes away from 11 o'clock. We'll be wrapping this up very shortly. We're speaking with Greg Chapman, the mayoral candidate for the 28th of April. Greg Chapman, finally, on the 28th of April, when people go in to vote, they're going to have half a dozen choices there for mayor. Why should Greg Chapman get their number one vote?
Well, mate, I've been through every dried gully in town. I've run a business. I know what it's like to eat Vegemite sandwiches when builders wouldn't pay their bills. I know what it's like to try to sweet talk the bank manager to give you a bit more time. I know what it's like to do it hard. I know what it's like when the times are good and when the blokes won't come to work because the surf's up and you have to chase them up to get them to work. And I know that full well that the council is a fantastic place. Don't get me wrong. There is doom and gloom here and there. But you have a look at the area we live in. People come from around the world to come and stay with us. We've got the sun, we've got the surf, we've got Moreton Bay, we've got Bribie Island, and we've got the mountains. We've got Mount Mee, we've got Mount Nebo, we've got back through into Sanford. The areas there have got great restaurants. We've got restaurants down the front of Redcliffe, and we've got restaurants Woody Point. We've got beautiful restaurants here in Caboolture. It's a fantastic place to go and have a feed and have a drink. I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world. And I had a couple of English friends come with me and they stayed with me one day. I'd actually bought a couple of rolls over at Bribie, sat on the water there and we had prawns. And we put prawns in the rolls, we had a couple of Coronas, and we sat there and watched the sun go down. And just as we did that, 3 dolphins come past just next to Pumice Passage. And one of them looked at me and said, "I can't believe we sent you out here as convicts. We should have come out here and sent you back to England." And that's the way it should have been. And just at sunset, I couldn't believe everything come on cue. There was rainbow lorikeets in the trees, taking the honey out of the melaleucas. It's just a fantastic area that we live in. I'm very, very proud of our area.
And the final question is, we do have optional preferential voting. Will you be allocating preferences, and which way will they be on April the 28th?
I'll have to look at that at the moment, but...
are you in discussions with preference deals at the moment?
Yes, I am.
And which way are they?
They're still in the air. They're still in the air. I'm sorry. I can't let out just at the moment.
Open transparency in local council is what we push for here. Which way are you favouring at the moment? If you had your way, which way would you be preferencing if it was all to come out now?
Well, if it all comes out, it'll be all transparent on the day. The people will be able to view it. It'll be perfect.
101.5 FM. Greg Chapman, we thank you for your time. Good luck on the 28th of April. May the residents of Moreton Bay region be the winner after the 28th of April.
Yeah, thanks very much, Darren.